Welcome to what will probably be my most hated video so far. I'm calling it now. So when I'm looking for new horror movies to watch, I tend to go on forums and stuff like Bloody Disgusting or Fangoria is a great place to look for these. And a lot of people just don't want to hear about it. They'd rather watch old 80s slashers. And when I ask why, it's because they think they're going to get the same regurgitated film over and over again. And usually that film is either The Conjuring or Insidious or one of the millions of remakes of 80s horror movies, and it really bums me out because there's so much good stuff coming out for horror and these people just don't want to hear about it. They want to watch the same old stuff over and over again, and it really sucks to see that. Now don't get me wrong, I like Insidious 1 and 2, I like The Conjuring 1 and 2, but these movies, no fault of their own, ruined horror for almost a decade, especially big budget horror, because people would just think loud noise equals scary, loud noise equals success.
Brew! Gotcha, scared you.
And that's not the case. That's not why Insidious and The Conjuring did so well. It's because they were different for the time that they came out. But then they themselves became just generic, like standard jump scare movies that were just completely uninteresting. But everyone went and saw them because those were the only horror movies that were getting pushed in people's faces. It wasn't these small, like, indie movies that were doing something interesting within the genre. It was always loud noise equals scary. So with this video, I want to give you a timeline of where I think things went wrong and where things are starting to get good again. And at the end, what I want to do is give you 5 recommendations within these each subgenres that could hopefully give you some faith in modern horror. For me, the decline of horror really started with the 2000s boom of torture porn. People think Hostel and Saw started it, but it was actually the remake of Texas Chainsaw. You know, the first remake, not the 500th one we're on now. Hostel and Saw are still really the big names of this kind of genre. Companies started to take notice and think gore equals success, which is not what made those movies big. It was the setting, it was the story, and all the twists in Saw especially are what made that film big and shocking. And these companies just thought, gore equals success, we can make money. That's why these movies made money, when that's not the case at all. There was 2 films that got me into horror and made me become a fan, and one is Hostel. I watched it when I was way too young to be seeing any of that. That's probably why I have so much trauma. The story and the setting and just the way it all plays out, you couldn't help but not watch, even though you wanted to look away. Plus, what other movie can you watch where a guy slips on blood and kills himself with a chainsaw? Are you kidding me? That's the same reason Saw was so successful, because of the story, the characters, the whole setting, the fact that it was just in this one room, and then the ending blew everyone away. You couldn't help but watch, even as someone was sawing their leg off. You couldn't help but watch. You wanted to look away, but you couldn't, because the story was so compelling. And that's what all these other movies didn't just get. Even later Saw films didn't understand that. It just became completely convoluted for the sake of gore. Also, Spiral can
suck my dick.
The late 2000s was really where we had to start dumpster diving for horror movies, because it was fucking terrible. Even as a kid, I knew they were bad. And bearing in mind, I was like 12 or 13 at the time. We were getting all these remakes of classic 80s movies and some underground stuff. The problem was, all of it was getting CG and 3D added to it, and it looked fucking terrible. And there's one place where we can look and point the finger and say it was your fault. James Cameron's Avatar ruined movies for about the next 5 years, because they all needed to have CG or 3D added to them. And all those movies have aged like a fucking My Little Pony cum jar left on a radiator. So John Carpenter's The Thing is the #1 favourite movie for me, like, of all time. I watched it about 13 or 14 times and I still love it to death. And it fucking hurts me, right? The people who were making the prequel for The Thing tried to stay as faithful as possible. They had practical effects and they look great. They look fucking incredible. You can watch them on the channel called Studio ADI. They created all the practical effects. They've done work for multiple movies. They have an entire playlist of all the work they did for The Thing, and it breaks my fucking heart, because the company who was producing the movie saw the cut and said, what the fuck is this? Put CGI in or piss off. And they completely ruined what could have been a perfectly fine prequel. Not amazing, but it would have been so much better than what we got, because we got this abomination. hope to God that cut exists somewhere and it gets released someday, because I need to see what we could have had. Even if it's not full effects and everything with it finished, I need to see it, because at least I will know what we could have had versus the fucking dumpster fire that we got. If there's one movie I recommend you check out in this time period of horror, I would say the remake of My Bloody Valentine. Now, I love the original. If Hostel was my little, look into the genre, My Bloody Valentine is where I was fully invested in it and loved it. And the remake is fine. It's good for that time period of the whole remake, reboot, whatever thing. The 3D has not aged the best, but it's aged a lot better and used a lot more effectively. And the kills are good too. They're not pop out in your face because 3D, oh god.
Disgusting!
I did mention it at the start, so I'll just go over this briefly, but the early 2010s, for really the rest of the decade, was just full of these loud noise equals scary things, because The Conjuring and Insidious really kicked that off. It's not their fault, that's just what these companies saw and thought that equals success, and just dragged that out through the mud until it was just completely dead. The sad reality is it comes down to you and what you want to see, because movies have become like music, where there are so many movies coming out that you will just be fed the popular ones instead of the good ones. It's like with music, there are so many good songs out there, you have to hunt for them now. You can't just expect them to be fed to you like it used to be. You have to hunt for these films. That's not to say we don't get fed good movies every so often. I mean, we had the 2 It remakes, we had Get Out, we had Hereditary, which was fucking phenomenal movies. The added issue here is movies are such a bigger time investment. With music, you can just skim through the song and decide if you like it. With a movie, if the trailer doesn't sell you, you're probably not going to watch it. And the problem is, trailers have got this formula now that they follow usually. And also, trailers can be fucking terrible and not tell you a damn thing about the movie. I'm going to tell you what I do, and hopefully that helps. So I watch YouTubers like Elvis the Alien, who watches fucking terrible movies, but sometimes really good ones. There's Good Bad Flicks, which cover a lot of kind of obscure movies. And there's Dead Meat, which, if you're a horror fan, you know about Dead Meat. They're fucking great at what they do.
Ah! No!
Amy, are you okay?
No! My fucking thing broke!
Ryan Hollinger is another really good horror-specific YouTuber that I recommend you check out. It's always satisfying when you watch a movie and then watch his videos just to see what he comes up with analytically. It's really interesting. I highly recommend his channel as well. I'd also recommend watching a lot of horror documentaries. I watched both the In Search of Darkness movies, which are 4 hours each, and just made a list of all the movies that I saw that look cool, be it old or new. They really help me find stuff that I like. I also follow horror-specific accounts on Instagram and stuff like that, like Bloody Disgusting and Fangoria are both really good places to find horror movies, old and new. I tend to look at specific production companies that make good movies that I like. For instance, Blumhouse is kind of hit or miss. They tend to promote whatever, okay, but they do put out some good movies. A24 put out amazing movies, and they don't promote the ones that suck. They know when they have a stinker on their hands, and they just push it out the door and then say nothing about it, whereas they promote the really good stuff that they make. So Frodo has a film production company called Spectrevision, and they've made some of the best horror movies of the past decade, or sci-fi in general. Just look at Color Out of Space, A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night. Home Alone? A girl walks home alone at night. You cunt. So I'm going to recommend 5 movies within different subgenres to give you faith in modern horror, hopefully. And since I just talked about Spectrevision, let's talk about Mandy, the movie that revitalised Nicolas Cage's career, and god damn it, I'm so happy that he's back. Now, to quote Joe Bob Briggs,
"This is a mushroom movie, just trust me on that."
it is so trippy. The colour usage is fucking incredible. It's the first thing you notice with this movie, I think. And the story in general, yeah, it's all cultist. You can take it or leave it with that. I don't blame you. But the way it's executed is so brilliant. You will just be focused on it the entire time. And it's such a great revenge movie. Nicolas Cage is on top form with this. Like, this movie really kind of brought him back into the spotlight because of how well he did on this. I have to mention Train to Busan for this. It is one of the best zombie movies of the past decade, and you're probably going,
No! God, please, no! 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 No!
shut up, watch the opening, and then get back to me. Now, while I rag on CG in movies, it works really great here. I mean, what's cooler than watching a ball of zombies chase a train? And it's just so satisfying. And the way that they move as well, they didn't want to have like your typical slow walking zombie. They had a dance choreographer make these kind of jolty movements with the zombies, and it makes it extra creepy. There may be giant crowds, but it's still really high stakes. And not to mention the casting as well is really solid. Usually like little girls are really annoying in horror movies, but even in this, she's like perfectly fine for the role that she's playing. And the ending is so fucking sad. Like, you see it coming, but it still fucks you up. I wanted to put a remake in here to show that some remakes can be good, even when most of them suck, and that is the remake for Suspiria from 2018. I love the original Suspiria, but I will fully admit that there is next to no story, and there are so many areas where you can improve, and it's safe to say that this remake did it. Now, I love the use of colour in the original Suspiria. That's partially what got me into that movie, but the use of colour in this new one doesn't get talked about quite enough. It really helps to fit the story, which is this mix of witchcraft and post-World War II depression and all this sort of stuff, and it mixes together perfectly, and the kills are great, and the ending sequence is fucking phenomenal. If you watch that movie, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Say what you want about the original, it's great, but the ending to this one, it just blew me away when I saw it. I wanted to hate the remake, but on a second watch, finally watched it all, and I loved it, and I highly recommend it. Not to mention, they actually use Mother Susperiorum in this, whereas Argento didn't start adding that really until Inferno and that movie which we shan't talk about. It's also a Prime exclusive, so anyone can watch it regardless of what country you're in. With horror comedies, it's very hit or miss. You're either going to get a perfect film or you're going to get complete and utter wank. I'm going to pick What We Do in the Shadows for this because it is such a stupid film. It's been so long since I've laughed at a movie that much, and that was just perfect for me. It's kind of like this documentary style film about vampires living in New Zealand, but it gets so ridiculous and over the top. It doesn't take you out of the documentary style, but it's so dumb. There is a TV series afterwards that's set in America, I think, that I want to see. Definitely watch the movie. It's almost always on Amazon Prime. For my last pick, this is the most recent film that's come out and that I've watched. It's probably one of my favourite movies of the year, and that's X. I was worried this movie was going to suck because usually when horror movies get talked about in like bigger media outlets, it's probably going to be generic. That's what I've learned, and that's what you should pay attention to, but also be wary of at the same time. Now, there is so much with X that could be considered generic. I mean, you've got the homage to Texas Chainsaw with the farmhouse that they're using. You've got the fact there are young people having sex and they're probably going to die because that's just how slashers work. And you're partially right, but the story it tells within it is so good that even with those bits of like typical slasher stuff, it's so good with the story it tells about this whole thing of aging and how it's inevitable. As much as you don't want to admit it, humans rely on sex. That's where the basis for everything comes from with humanity, and when you get old, it's going to be hard to do that, and it's going to be depressing for some people, and god damn it, this movie's great. I don't know what else to say. You need to watch this movie. I'm going to make a video on this movie because I love it so much. It's one of the best movies of the year for me. Up there is number one. If you made it to the end of this video, I really appreciate you for watching all the way through, because this took me way longer than it was meant to. I was expecting to have this out within like 2 or 3 weeks at a push. And oh boy was I wrong. I had mental health issues get worse. I had physical issues get worse. I thought I was going blind fully in this eye. I would have got a free dog, but I didn't, so here we are. This is very much like a test kind of thing. I'm not going to make a video like this for a fucking long time, because this took me ages. It took me nearly 2 months to finish, and I didn't think I'd get it out in time for Halloween, but here we are. And thank God I'm not doing one of these for like another, probably a year, because that was so bad. But I really appreciate I appreciate you for watching this far in. And yeah, I'll do a normal movie review next time, because fuck me, that was torture.